Hi guys, I'm Tanvi. Welcome to my channel. If you're someone who likes art or is trying to learn more about art, you're in the right place. I've realized recently that I spend quite a lot of time looking at art, but not nearly enough time actually understanding it. I'll save paintings to Pinterest, I'll stop scrolling when I see an artist I love, I'll take the time to go to galleries, but if you ask me why a particular painting resonated with me, I don't think I'd always have a very good answer, and I'd really like to change that. I'd also love to start collecting art one day, and what I've realized is that collecting usually starts with emerging artists. They're the ones that are actually accessible and also often the most exciting because you're watching their careers unfold in real time. So I thought I'd combine those things into a series. This series is basically me teaching myself about art, one emerging artist at a time. Every episode, I'll choose an artist whose work I find interesting, learn more about their practice, and use it as a way to explore the artists, movements, and ideas that they remind me of. It's as much for me as for anyone watching, and so hopefully, if you've ever wanted to get into art but found it a bit intimidating, we can learn together. So, this episode's artist is Maria Luz. Maria Luz is a Portuguese artist based in Lisbon. These are some of her works, and her original oil paintings generally sit somewhere between 650 and 1250 euros, depending on the size and series. She's won Portugal's Young Art Prize in 2022 and has also shown her work at Art Basel Paris, was selected for the Severa International Art Biennale, and her work has even appeared in interiors featured by Architectural Digest. One of the things that I love about looking at emerging artists is seeing how they fit into conversations that have been happening in art for hundreds of years. Whenever I come across an artist, I almost instinctively start asking myself what other artists they remind me of, because it helps me understand where their work sits. The first person I thought was Giorgio Morandi, not because their paintings look the same, but because they both seem interested in giving ordinary objects this really quiet sense of importance. Morandi painted bottles and bowls over and over again. Maria Luz paints things like chairs, flowers, old fishing nets, and even blue bin bags. Different subjects, but very similar ways of looking at the world. Both artists seem to believe that if you spend enough time looking at something ordinary, it becomes extraordinary. The second comparison that kept coming back to me was Richter. If you look at some of Maria's flower paintings, there's this really soft blur around the edges. It's not there just to make the painting look soft, it makes it feel like you're looking at a memory rather than a perfectly sharp photograph. It makes me feel nostalgic for a feeling of anguish or even yearning. That's something Richter explored for decades, and it's interesting to see a contemporary artist using that same visual language in her own way. There's then a much looser comparison that I couldn't not mention because I'm slightly obsessed with Yves Klein. This print made me immediately think of him. Obviously, they're doing completely different things conceptually, and I'm not saying that she's working in Klein's lineage, but there is something about the incredibly saturated ultramarine blue that just pulls you in. Klein managed to make color feel like the subject itself, and whenever I see a blue this intense, he's always the first artist I think of. So if you're a fellow Klein fan, you'll probably understand why I had to include this. The mood also reminded me a little of Hammershøi. His paintings are incredibly quiet, often just empty interiors with soft light. Maria Luz isn't painting empty rooms, but I think she's creating a very similar feeling. Even when she's painting a single flower or an object from the street, there's this sense of stillness that makes you stop for a moment. Once I made these connections, I started reading more about her, and a lot of those instincts actually lined up with the way she works. Before studying painting, she actually started in industrial design. I think you can still see that background in her compositions. They're incredibly considered without ever feeling overly designed. She later switched to painting, studied at the Faculty of Fine Arts in Lisbon, and today her process starts long before she picks up a paintbrush. She photographs overlooked corners of the city on analog film, sketches those photographs, and then slowly develops them into oil paintings. She talks about painting the loneliness of everyday city life, and I actually think that's a really accurate description of her work. What I like is that she's not painting beautiful objects in the traditional sense. She's painting the kind of things most of us would walk straight past. Somehow, by isolating them and giving them so much attention, they become strangely beautiful. Her paintings also tend to be quite small, often around the size of a book, which makes the experience feel really intimate. You almost have to lean in rather than the painting demanding your attention. Something else I noticed is how much light is doing the work in these paintings. The compositions are usually very simple, but the way she uses light gives ordinary objects this quiet emotional weight. One thing I found particularly interesting, and this is more my interpretation than something she's explicitly said, is the feeling of saudade. Saudade is a Portuguese word that's often described as a kind of longing or melancholy, but it's actually way more nuanced than that. It's nostalgic without necessarily wanting to go backwards. It feels beautiful and sad at the same time. Once I learned about that idea, a lot of her paintings suddenly clicked for me. Even her flower paintings don't really feel like they're about flowers, they feel like they're about memory. There's also an interesting cultural association with the carnation, which appears in several of her works. In Portugal, the carnation is famously associated with the Carnation Revolution of 1974, and this made me connect the two. Again, this is just a connection that I've made, and I don't believe it's something she's explicitly stated as part of her process. So that's Maria Luz. I just wanted to mention again that I'm not a professional and none of this is investment advice. These are just strictly my opinions and my take on artists and their art. I wanted to end this video with some of the things that I'm loving at the moment. I have been reading a few books. The first one is The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, who, fun fact, is Martin Scorsese's ex-wife. I found out in the dedication section. But if you don't know about this book, it is a 12-week, almost creative reset for anyone. You don't have to necessarily be a creative. If you are just looking to expand the way you think and the way you live creatively day to day, this book is for you. I'm currently on week 3 and I'm really loving it. You have a bunch of tasks at the end of it that you have to complete every week. And I've been doing morning pages every morning, which has been quite great actually. It's been quite refreshing. The other thing I'm reading also parallelly is East of Eden, which is obviously all over Book Talk. And I'm so excited to get through it because I've heard that it's one of those books that everyone has to read once in their life. And so I'm quite excited to see what that's about. And also, I believe that there is a movie coming out with Florence Pugh as Kathy, who is a character who has just been introduced to me in the book. So I'm really paying attention to what's being done. I have been using a few new wellness devices this month. I bought the TheraBody Mask Glow, which is a red light therapy mask, which I'm really loving. Honestly, I could feel the difference in my skin even after just one use. So I'm gonna make sure I stay consistent with that. And I've also been using the Aura Ring, which has been great for tracking my daily stress levels and also has a great section on women's health that I love. Phoebe Bridgers is finally back and I could not be more excited. I am the biggest Phoebe Bridgers fan and I'm so lucky to have gotten tickets to her concert in December in London. I'm super excited for her new album to come out. I've also been wearing some new jewelry by some emerging Indian designers. This one is from a designer called Bhavya Ramesh in India. Very out of the box contemporary jewelry, and I love the way that they produce their branding for their ads. It's like a proper film production. It's really cool to see. These are also a few Australian brands that I've been loving. I really love Australian fashion. I think that there's so many cool brands down there that are really so different from mainstream fashion brands today. I think that the kind of innovation that they're bringing to the fashion scene is so fun and so colorful and so exciting. And you get to pick from so many different styles. I'm always waiting for these brands to pop up in London so I can go physically try and shop for some of those. So these are a few of the things that I've been loving this week. I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode, and I hope that you enjoyed this style of video. If there's anything more you'd like to see or any artists that you'd like me to spotlight, I'd love to hear from you guys. Have an amazing week, and I will be linking all of the things that I talked about today in my bio, so please feel free to check that out.